Rondo really was experienced enough.
Pure point guards may be out of fashion today, but there was one point guard who turned it into a style and even won championships doing nothing but passing the ball. We're not talking about your favorite point guard, Chris Paul. Instead, we're talking about Rajon Rondo, a forgotten name today when you look at point guards like Stephen Curry, Damian Lillard, and Luka Dončić, but he was good enough to give Kobe Bryant and the Lakers a scare. So let's take a look at just how good Rajon Rondo actually was. Probably the most milked NBA championship of all time is the 2008 title run of the Boston Celtics. That team had the big three of Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. And say what you want about Doc Rivers and his recent failures, but he was a damn good coach who kept that team together and led them to a championship. But while a lot of people give most of the credit to the big three, their point guard was one of their unsung heroes. No matter how good a team may be, it still needs a steady point guard to keep it all together and make life easier for the superstars. In this case, the Celtics had Rajon Rondo.
A hit to Rondo. Rondo, one man to beat, swoops back to Allen. Credit pass.
Now, when you think about the late 2000s and early 2010s and talk about the best point guards of that era, you'd probably be talking about Chris Paul, Steve Nash, Derrick Rose, and Russell Westbrook. At this point, Rondo has become a forgotten name from that era, but that doesn't mean he's not as good as them. In fact, he's one of the most underrated point guards in recent history, and he's always been overlooked. Rondo wasn't expected to be a star coming out of college. He spent 2 years in Kentucky, putting up good numbers, but he wasn't a star or anything like that. In fact, he was pretty raw coming into the 2006 NBA draft as the 21st overall pick by the Phoenix Suns before he got traded to the Boston Celtics. But it didn't take long for Rondo to establish himself as the Celtics starting point guard. When Boston acquired Garnett and Allen in 2007, all eyes were on them. Meanwhile, Rondo was quietly making his way into the starting lineup together with 3 Hall of Fame players. And that was when he started proving how good he could actually be. Garnett, Pierce, and Allen may be great, but they were never primary playmakers. They needed a point guard to make life easy for them. That was what Rondo did. He was a quality starting guard on a team full of talent.
Shot clock winding down the third. Rondo. Oh, no, he didn't.
His numbers weren't all that impressive during the 2008 title run, but he did whatever he could to help the Celtics clinch the title, averaging 9.3 points and 6.7 assists in the finals. He only got better from there. By his third season in the league, Rondo's touches and role increased. Instead of simply dribbling the ball up the court and giving it to the big three, he started becoming more of a real playmaker. He showcased his great handles and equally impressive passing skills as a pass-first guard. But while his playmaking was good, it was his defense that actually shone. Rondo may only be 6'1", but has a strong athletic body and a 6'9" wingspan that gives him the edge on defense. He could shut down opposing point guards and make life difficult for them. So when the Celtics failed to defend their title in 2009, Rondo rose up as one of the best young playmakers and defenders in the league. And it was during the 2009-10 season when he started his ascent. The Boston Celtics had a legitimate Big Four that season because of Rondo's rise. His playmaking improved, but his defense was even better. In only his 4th season in the league, he became an all-star and was the league leader in steals. His offense wasn't that bad either. Rondo was never known for his scoring because he didn't have a good jump shot, but he can get to the basket and finish strong with those long arms and large hands.
Looking, lobbing for Rondo. He put it in. We're going to overtime.
He even made the behind-the-back pass fake layup popular. In what was a boring and slow-paced Celtics system with older players leading the way, Rondo was the young force that made them exciting to watch. And he was even more impressive during the 2010 run to the NBA Finals. He was a different person in the second round against the Cleveland Cavaliers in the series where LeBron allegedly quit on his team. Rondo was running rounds all over the Cavs' backcourt, averaging 20.7 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 11.8 assists. That was when the Celtics knew they had a special point guard leading them in the backcourt. Rondo's play helped the Celtics reach the 2010 Finals, where they faced the Los Angeles Lakers in a rematch of the 2008 Finals. But while he and the Celtics lost in 7 games, a star was definitely born after Rondo elevated his game during the playoffs. In 2011, it was now the Big Four instead of just the Big Three, because Rondo, Garnett, Pierce, and Allen all made it to the All-Star game. But they went up against an even better Big Three in Miami when the Heat, led by LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, beat them in 7 games in the East Finals. This was the beginning of the end for Boston, but Rondo kept on rising as one of the best point guards in the NBA.
Against the Heat, which, as you say, is unusual.
Oh, Rondo, what a move!
During the 2011-12 season, Rondo was arguably the Celtics' best player because the Big Three had gotten older, and he responded not by scoring, but by getting everyone else involved, leading the entire NBA in assists while playing his usual brand of strong defense. That year was Rondo's peak as a player, as he finished 8th in the MVP voting and was in the All-NBA third team and All-Defensive second team. Not bad for an overlooked and underrated point guard averaging 11 points and 11 assists. But there was still only so much that a pass-first point guard could do. When the Big Three era in Boston ended, Rondo struggled to not only get back to all-star level, but also lead the Celtics back to the playoffs. And that was when it may have become clear that he was never good enough to be a franchise star. At his peak, you could expect him to deliver on both ends of the floor because of his superb playmaking and strong defense. At times, you could expect Rondo to hit a few jumpers and play solid offense, especially when defenses tend to focus away from him.
Rondo, one man to beat, swoops back to Allen, pretty pass!
But when he's the only good player on a roster that doesn't have enough talent, he becomes an afterthought. That was what happened to him in his post-Celtics career. After getting traded from Boston late in 2014, Rondo bounced around quite a bit. At times, he played incredibly well, such as averaging nearly 12 points and 12 assists on a bad Sacramento Kings team in 2016. Other times, however, he was more of a distraction, a guy who clashed with head coaches and could not do anything well when the ball wasn't in his hands. It made sense for him to struggle because the NBA was steadily transitioning into a three-point shooting league that focuses on moving the ball around a lot instead of letting it stay with one player. Rondo's game relied on setting the table up instead of spotting up and hitting jumpers. That did not work in the late 2010s when he became a liability on offense because of his one-dimensional style of play. And he wasn't even in his 30s yet when he started his decline. In other words, he was a good player when he was with the Celtics because having Hall of Fame teammates allowed him to be good. You'd probably average at least 5 assists if you were the point guard for Garnett, Pierce, and Allen. But when he's the guy leading the entire offense without the help of star players, he won't do much for your team because of his offensive limitations and stubbornness to adjust and develop the other parts of his game. Rondo was the example of a player who got left behind by the changing times in a hurry. He was on his rise when pass-first playmakers were still a thing in the NBA, but when the three-point shot became the king of offense, he started disappearing further into the background of obscurity because he refused to adjust his game outside of being a pass-first point guard who always needs the ball in his hands.
Rondo really was experienced enough.
Basically, he got lost in the middle of the game's evolution, all while equally old players like Chris Paul and Mike Conley were still getting good minutes as starters because they adjusted to the new times. But in 2019, he started accepting the fact that he was no longer going to be a starting point guard in a league where pace and space ruled the floor. Rondo turned into a role player for the Los Angeles Lakers, taking care of business as the leader of the second unit to stabilize the bench mob. He didn't put up big numbers, but was an integral part of that 2020 bubble championship run, averaging 8.8 points and 6.6 assists as a bench player during that 2020 playoff run to the title. Rondo now had his second championship ring, solidifying his place as a winner. Rondo, however, never changed or adjusted his game. While he had accepted that he was a role player and a backup point guard, he never developed a good jump shot or even a steady free throw routine. He was still the same old player who entered the league in 2006 and never added much to his game since his Boston Celtics days. So, while old heads would love to talk a lot about how good Rondo was during his prime years were so short-lived that he basically disappeared into the background after that 2020 title run with the Lakers. And no one even remembers him playing his final game in 2022 and finally retiring in 2024.